Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining us from different parts of the world. I'd like to welcome you to today's dialogue session. We'll pause briefly to allow more participants to join us before we get started. Thank you. And as we wait, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Would love to know where you're joining from. You can include your name, organization, or the city or country. Yes, we already see people joining in from across the globe. Thank you for making time to be with us today. This is a great opportunity to connect, so feel free to use the chat throughout the session to share your thoughts and reflections. Once again, a warm welcome to today's session. My name is Florence Lake from the International Water Association, and I'm pleased to introduce today's dialogue, which is focusing on catalyzing investments, innovative financing for sanitation. In the next slide, I will give a brief background about the Africa Sanitation Dialogue. So the Africa CWISE, which is Citywide Inclusive Sanitation Network, was launched in 2022 during the IAA World Water Congress, and is a collaborative platform of partners that are working together to advance inclusive urban sanitation across the African continent. Early this year in February, IAA and the Gates Foundation co-hosted an Africa CWISE network meeting during the Africa Water and Sanitation Conference or Congress in Kampala. And the session brought together urban sanitation actors from across Africa to share updates, align priorities, as well as identify key activities for the year ahead. And one of the key outcomes from that meeting was the endorsement of Quarterly Sanitation Dialogues, which is an initiative aimed at enhancing advocacy, learning, and knowledge exchange on the inclusive urban sanitation agenda. The Africa Sanitation Dialogues are a regional upset of this initiative, and it's coordinated by IAA as part of its leadership of the Africa CWISE network. This is a way to keep the network active and engaged throughout 2025. So we have two dialogues planned this year, both intended to address urban sanitation challenges in Africa. Today's session is led by the African Development Bank and is the first session. The second dialogue was focused on empowering utilities for non-sewage sanitation service provision. So stay tuned for more information on this. In the next slide, before we dive in, I just want to share a few quick housekeeping notes. Please note that this dialogue is being recorded, and the recording and presentation slides will be shared on the IAA Connect Plus platform, as well as the IAA network website. The speakers are also reminded to ensure that they have permission for any copyrighted content used. Please note that the views shared during the dialogues are those of the speakers and not necessarily of IAA. And lastly, to ensure your active engagement, please use the chat box to share your thoughts and interact with fellow attendees throughout the session. You're also welcome to use the Q&A box to submit any questions for our panelists during the discussions. Participants are also kindly reminded that microphones are muted, and so we won't be using the raise hand feature for this dialogue. I'll now hand over to our moderator, Peter Voss from the African Development Bank, who will take us through the rest of today's program. So over to you, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Florence, for your introduction. I want to welcome everybody to the African Sanitation Dialogue on behalf of the African Development Bank. I think this dialogue comes at the right time. We are all struggling with how to promote investments in urban sanitation and what role innovation in finance can play. So I will first introduce the keynote speaker for the African Development Bank, Mr. Osenu Guyan, and I will give a short bio, and then he will give the keynote. So Osenu is a water and security engineer. He joined the African Development Bank in 2012 as a sanitation specialist within the Water and Sanitation Department. Today, he is acting manager of the Water Security and Sanitation Division of North, West, and Central African regions. Before joining the bank, he managed a consultancy firm in Senegal from 2002 to 2012. Over to you, Osenu.
Thank you so much, Peter. So, dear colleagues, partners, sanitation expert, participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the African Development Bank and the Water Development and Sanitation Department, I am pleased to share with you some thoughts pertaining to the topic gathering us today. I mean the sanitation finance. We all know there is a persistent investment in the water sector, broadly speaking, and specifically in sanitation. The financing gap to ensure full access to sanitation, to sustainable, secured services remain huge in Africa, which is having the lowest sanitation access rate in the world. The cost of achieving full access to sanitation services in sub-Saharan Africa would need, according to estimates made few years back, an average of more than 25 billion in annual capital spending and an additional 13 billion in annual O&M costs. Current investment falls significantly short, with annual funding covering 10 to 15 billion annually. The financing gap amounts then to roughly 25 to 30 billion each year. And these estimates have been done a few years back. It means that today, if we compare what have been achieved and what remain to be done, it's sure that these figures are higher than what is quoted here. What are the root causes? One of the fundamental reasons why most countries find it difficult to mobilize financial resources is the lack of project preparation capacity. In other words, the absence of preliminary studies makes it difficult to mobilize easily potential resources from development partners. Another critical issue is the low disbursement rate of resources that are made available by these development partners, despite the need for significant investment acceleration to achieve the sanitation SDGs. So business as usual is not going to close the sanitation gap and free up the financial resources to provide safely managed sanitation for all. Regardless of how the investment need is estimated, the costs exceed the current capacity of public sector to finance. Now, what ways forward? A range of financing approaches, making the most of efficiency gains, adjusting targets and blending fundings from public and private sources is required to meet the investment needs. Bearing these challenges in mind, it must be emphasized that at least country capacity development in project preparation and in rapid disbursement as well to easily secure resources mobilization from development partners. To help its regional member countries to address their capacity needs in these two domains, the African Development Bank has set up specific financing windows for project preparation and promote some financing tools. Windows for project preparation available at the African Development Bank. We can cite it. The project preparation facility for countries accessing to concessional funds, loans or grants. The middle income technical assistant fund and the Africa Water Facility Trust Fund, the UMDF, Urban and Municipal Development Fund. These are some funds that are available in the bank, within the bank, to support project preparation at country level. Now let's focus a bit on the Africa Water Facility that has dedicated resources for sanitation. Over the past 15 years, the African Water Facility has played a pivotal role in promoting innovations in sanitation as means for driving businesses and job creation, as well as economic and social development. It contributed to elevate the sanitation profile, value, and consideration in many African countries. The AOC initiative, Africa Urban Sanitation Investment Initiative, which is the AWF flagship program, is developed based on the knowledge gained from a previous pilot program fostering innovative urban sanitation in Africa. This initiative will be discussed in more detail in the following panel session. Another way for mobilizing finances for sanitation is climate financing, which is another indispensable financing source to bring sanitation to a higher level. Climate Policy Initiative revealed in its most recent report that in 2022, in total, 49 billion of all climate financing went to Africa for all sectors, including water and sanitation, of which 30 billion went to sub-Saharan Africa. The African Development Bank set up a dedicated climate action window to contribute to closing the climate financing gap in Africa too. The water sector in 2025, this year, our pipeline this year includes 10 operations supported through the climate action window. Another way to go is also the engagement of the private sector. The private sector must play a more prominent role in contributing to close the urban sanitation financing gap in Africa. The African Development Bank strategy in this area is to strengthen non-sovereign operation. The Water and Sanitation Department has set up a dedicated team for that purpose. It should be highlighted as other potential sources of financing the large capital pools from pension funds and sovereign wealth funds, currently holding over 700 billion in assets under management in Africa. We should also consider the microfinancing systems that could also be valued as financing sources for SMEs which are active along the sanitation value chains, as evidenced by some successful operations supported by African Water Facility over the pilot phase of its urban sanitation program prior to its ongoing AOC initiative. I could not end these introductory remarks without talking about this issue of slow disbursement. Indeed, we can mobilize resources, but these resources should be dispersed very quick, in order to meet our targets, in SDG targets. Yes, in that perspective, the result-based financing instrument or program for result financing for the World Bank reveals its effectiveness. Some positive cases can be cited from African Development Bank experiences in Egypt. I want to quote the integrated sanitation, rural sanitation project in Egypt, and a past World Bank project in Dakar, supported through what was called the output-based aid program. Of course, all these solutions must be supported by strengthened sector dialogue, governance with reforms to promote regulatory and incentive mechanisms, and communication of result through various media like what we are doing right now. I thank you very much. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Ozanu, for your sharp insights and also elaborating on the important role of the African Development Bank in sanitation, and also the shortcomings and the challenges. So I want to start with short setting the scene. But it already has been said by Osunu that there are devastating numbers in sanitation. 780 million people in the African continent lack basic sanitation. 200 million do still practice open defecation. And in African cities, 2 out of 3 people lack access to safely managed sanitation. And the current investment levels fall short, as indicated, that the financing gap is between 25 and 30 billion per year for sanitation. But despite these dramatic numbers, there are also clear signs of change for the better. The political profile in Africa for sanitation has never been so high, and attention is moving away from centralized systems, sewer systems, as the only solution. Decentralized options get more attention. And we are at the brink of a paradigm shift, in my view. Thinking is more on wastewater as a value rather than as a problem to solve, and business cases become stronger. New innovative technologies appear that function standalone and independently and rely less on water. Innovative financing to trigger private sector financing and involvement become more available also. And the challenges of innovative financing remain nevertheless large, and still a lot of work needs to be done to fully reap the benefits. I think therefore it's important to have this dialogue at this time to see where we are and what is needed. And we are very delighted to have very distinguished panelists who can shine a light on these intriguing issues. And also, I'm very pleased that there are so many people joining throughout Africa, but also outside Africa. So this is really a good moment to discuss and to have free exchange of views and opinions. We have structured it in 3 panelist groups. So the first group is representatives of international financial institutions. The second group is on local financial institutions to get more the local view of on the problem. And then, last but not least, other local non-financial institutions. So I start with the first segment. I will introduce in a short bio the panelist. The first one is Liliana Kente. She is a seasoned sanitary engineer with over 18 years experience in managing water and sanitation projects across more than 25 countries in Africa and beyond. Her experience spans infrastructure development, policy formulation, business planning, and master planning. She joined the African Development Bank in 2021 as a principal sanitation specialist under the African Water Facility. And she played a key role in establishing the African Urban Sanitation Investment Initiative and currently manages projects in Ghana and Liberia. So welcome, Ms. Liliana. The second one is the representative of the World Bank, Sanyu Lutalo. She is a senior water and sanitation specialist with the World Bank Water Global Solutions Practice Group and leads the bank's citywide inclusive sanitation program. She is also team leader for the bank's analytical and sector work on climate resilient sanitation. With over 20 years experience in infrastructure development, she has successfully led the design, implementation and evaluation of World Bank operations in more than 15 countries across Africa, Europe and Asia. And then Mr. Bimpin Dangol, he is senior sanitation expert at the Islamic Development Bank, bringing over 25 years of experience in project development, applied sciences, strategic planning, and organizational development. Bimpin plays a key role in advancing citywide inclusive sanitation initiatives through strategic collaboration with the AfDB and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I think we have gathered the right people in this panel. I have 2 questions First is a generic question, and you can answer that in your reply, and a specific question for each of the representatives of the institutions. So the first question, the generic question, which is equal to all the panelists for the three segments. It is the provision of innovative financing is generally considered to be crucial in helping to overcome the backlash in sanitation finance in Africa. What kind of innovative financing do you think is most needed, and how could your organization contribute to this? So that's a general question for everyone. And then the specific question for Liliane is, AUSI was just established half a year ago to provide more financing to urban sanitation in Africa. The ambition is high. It is to connect 50 million people to improved urban sanitation in 10 years. And the question is this achievable when we know that urban sanitation is almost by definition a local small-scale affair which takes long times to implement, certainly when a lot of awareness raising is needed also. Over to you, Liliane.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are. It's always a pleasure to talk about sanitation, especially in this challenging while we are approaching 2030. Yes, a very good question about how AUSI can be a changing game in these sanitation achievements, especially looking at the sanitation financing perspective. My answer will be yes, but of course, as you know, it will be very challenging. It will be very challenging when you're looking at the persistences of sanitation. We therefore need to really be very innovative. There should be innovation. When I'm thinking about innovation, we need to think about what new technology can we apply in this challenging momentum. Can we go for
good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. So absolutely, to your question, sanitation should be able to attract more climate finance. Why? Because sanitation is a climate issue. Sanitation is central to adaptation, protecting communities from floods, from disease outbreaks, from water scarcity. It's also a mitigation issue. Sanitation systems contribute up to 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And we recently concluded a study that looked into these links between sanitation and climate. We'll be releasing that shortly. Climate finances for sanitation basically refers simply to the financial resources allocated to projects and initiatives that help to build climate resilience in sanitation systems and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the sector. And it encompasses investments in infrastructure, technologies, capacity building, and so on. And as we've heard, the financial shortfall for achieving the SDG targets for sanitation is already substantial, and it's likely to increase with climate impacts. However, it's worth noting that the costs of implementing climate resilient sanitation systems are expected to be far lower than the cost of inaction. And, despite the significant needs that we see, sanitation receives just a small portion. I think in 2020, it was about 0.02% of climate-related development finance. That number has increased, but it's still very low. So how do we change that? To change this paradigm, we must, first of all, reframe sanitation as a climate investment. And I'll highlight a few actions to address this. First of all, we need to build the climate case. And how do we do that? Countries need to integrate sanitation into national climate strategies. Climate finance follows climate policy. And sanitation must be embedded into the NAPs, the National Adaptation Plans, and the NDCs, which are the nationally determined contributions of countries. And we've seen countries such as Mozambique, which has done this, unlocking co-financing for climate resilient sanitation. We also need to build institutional capacity and to develop bankable project pipelines. accessing climate finance, particularly some of the funding sources such as the GCF can be complex, and countries and cities need support to be able to prepare bankable climate smart sanitation projects. This could include, for example, emissions accounting, climate risk assessments, and robust monitoring systems, which many countries do not necessarily have the experience with. And this is evidenced by the fact that the capacity in the sector, the low capacity in the sector has actually contributed to the low uptake of, for example, the GCF funds. Fortunately, there are efforts that are being made to change this. The GCF, in collaboration with the Climate Resilient Sanitation Coalition partners, they have developed sectoral guidelines that to support countries and others in accessing climate funds, and they are also developing training programs to strengthen sector capacity to be able to access financing for sanitation. So there is progress. Project designs should include strong fundamentals to attract climate-related financing. We see that many sanitation projects are too small to attract climate funds because the thresholds that are established by many of these funds tend to be quite high. However, innovative approaches such as bundling decentralized interventions across projects, across cities, or even countries can change that. One example that I'll cite is the GCF IFC being the International Finance Corporation Scaling Resilient Water Infrastructure Facility, which is a $250 million approved support, facility to support multi-country programs in accessing, climate funding, for example, in Cote d'Ivoire and Morocco, which are already, beneficiaries of this new facility. We also need to leverage climate finance as part of a menu of financing options. And, we need to innovate with financing instruments. There's a whole diverse mix of climate finance instruments that could be tapped into to be able to scale up sanitation financing. Taking advantage of new funding and financing mechanisms such as, climate and green finance, as well as, for example, the sale of new products created from circular economy, from waste streams, which can also help to bridge the financing gap. And there are also other tools, such as or instruments such as results-based financing, which can reward verified emissions reductions. And we are seeing this being used in various contexts as well. We have climate bonds such as San Francisco's the city of San Francisco recently in 2024 issued a $1 billion green bond to fund climate resilient infrastructure upgrades. You look at tools such as carbon markets, which may also offer revenue streams for emissions reductions initiatives. And then, of course, there are the public investment tools, including IFI-backed loans and guarantees, which will remain also essential in the sector, and private financing through PPPs, which we have also talked about. It's also important to note the technical assistance, which also is required to bridge gaps and to build capacity. We also need to be able to mobilize private finance. That has already been touched upon by our keynote speaker. Countries need to create enabling environments for private sector participation. Investors need predictability. So this is really a crucial activity. And this means strong governance, clear policies, and performance-based incentives. It also involves, effective regulatory frameworks that support private investment. And then finally, we also need to strengthen institutions. as I conclude, I would really just want to emphasize that climate finance is not a silver bullet, but it can be a powerful lever. So if we align our sanitation with climate goals, we can build the institutional muscle and innovate on financing to be able to unlock the resources needed to deliver climate resilient sanitation for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanyu. I think that you clearly expressed that like the instruments are there, but there are limitations and impediments to apply those instruments. It's not so much there's a need for a lot of new instruments. Many instruments are available already, but there's somehow, some way, limitations in applying those. So I think that's a key lesson to take. I will go to the last panelist, that is Bimpin. The question to him is, besides the general question, is there a difference in your appreciation of urban sanitation compared with other development banks, as Islamic Development Bank? And are there specific approaches that make AfDB financing for the sanitation different from other development banks? Over to you, Bimpin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. Hello, everyone. Thank you, IWA and African Development Bank for this opportunity to present what Islamic Development Bank has been doing in financing sustainable sanitation intervention in our member countries. First, AfDB is the only South-to-South multilateral development bank, and we operate in 57 member countries across 4 continents. And 27 out of 57 member countries are in Africa. So our presence in Africa is very significant. And we finance based in the Sharia compliant, that is according to the Islamic laws, principles, and so on. So we do not finance project through interest-bearing loans and investments. So this is the little bit different modality we are adopting at Islamic Development Bank in terms of financing projects, including sanitation projects. Another initiatives we are having at the bank is Lives and Livelihood Fund. We call it LLF initiative, which started in 2016 with a blended financing approach. My colleague Sanyu, she highlighted that blending financing could be the innovative financing modality in the sanitation sector. And the LLF leverages concessional financing, and for the least developing countries, there is a grant element of 35%. So some of the key example of sanitation projects through LLF funding is Côte d'Ivoire project, which is focusing on non-serious sanitation and fecal sludge management services. And recently we have developed the Shiwais Aligned project in Bangladesh with the component of 35% grant element. So this showcases that AfDB, we are shifting more from traditional big wastewater management project to non-sewerage sanitation, fecal sludge management, and citywide inclusive sanitation project as well. And we are also building robust pipeline projects, particularly in Senegal and Niger for 2026 as well. So another thing is, in 2019, we have developed a sustainable finance framework at AfDB, within which we have an initiative called Green and Sustainability Sukuk. Sukuk is more like a bonds. It's a Islamic finance instrument, which is designed to raise capital for more climate resilient, environmental friendly, sustainable green projects that include sustainable sanitation projects. So till date, we have issued more than $5 billion of green sukuk. That includes wastewater management projects, water supply projects, and so on. So we want to take this opportunity to finance more for urban sanitation, sustainable urban sanitation project in our member countries. Thank you.
Lost. No, thank you so much for the overview, and we will we're very keen and happy to hear that you are involved in bond financing for sanitation, and that you especially very active in Seawise. So happy to learn more, but that will be in a separate session, I think, or maybe later on when there's still time. This is the end of the first segment. I call on the other panelists. Is there any question, any burning question that you want to pose to the presenters they just presented? Or maybe there's time also for one question from the audience. There's many questions from the audience, but I think that time is not sufficient to deal all with them. But first of all, other panelists, are there questions for this for these panelists? I think it remains silent, so I will go to the audience. There are many questions. One of the questions that was asked is how can financing models help coordinate governments' levels to avoid duplicating sanitation projects and the use of funds efficiently in African cities? And what can investors do to improve transparency and collaboration in sanitation projects to reduce overlaps and maximize impact in Africa? Who wants to go to answer this question from the audience?
Okay, for all these financing windows, I pointed out in my remarks, the resources are made available under countries' request. Due to that, I think there is at least the sector in each country know their priorities. And also, I think they are working according an investment program that they are coordinating. And the requests are received through, as far as it is about African Development Bank, through the governor, the country governor, which usually is the Ministry of Finance or Economy, depending on the country, depending on the country. So in that way, I think the coordination is already ensured or guaranteed at country level first. We do not receive direct requests from, for instance, NGOs or separate program. No, it's through the government. When we talk about the government, it should be initiated by the sector ministry through the governor of the country in the African Development Bank. I mean here the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Economy. Yeah, that's how maybe this duplication could be avoided. There, I think I saw another question. I don't know if I can just limit myself to responding to this last question, but I saw one requesting if there is or there are investment program deriving from projects that have been supported, which preparation have been supported by the bank. Yes, there are several ones. And I think as far as it is about sanitation, for instance, there are several programs on sanitation in several countries like Togo, I cannot sit, but yes, there are many. But what you should also bear in mind is that the projects that are which preparation have been supported by the bank are not only for bank financing. The needs to fully implement what have been prepared is far higher than what each country is requesting from the bank, or the level of financing that the given countries can access with the bank. So how we proceed at country level. You know that at country level there is what we call usually in most countries, I don't like these terms of donor coordination or partners, the development partners coordination. And in these forum or meetings, we have also a certain level of coordination of actions or investment program that are planned for each countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanu. There's many more questions, and it's a pity that we don't have time to go through all them, because that is what are the burning questions with the audience. So, but maybe there's still some time at the end. But let's continue to the second segment, which is the segment on with the representatives of local financial institutions. There are four. The first one is engineer Francis Musunguzi. He brings over 25 years of executive, diplomatic, and professional leadership across regional and multi-country platforms, with a strong footprint in the infrastructure and development finance sectors. He currently serves as the African Regional Director for Water.org, where he leads the business development and the creation of innovative financing instruments for project developers and regional financial institutions and investors. The second speaker is Fred Kyoko. He is currently the lead strategic initiatives and partnerships in KCB Group. He is a certified business solution architect and hands-on human capital specialist with a career of over 30 years spent in financial services, with 10 years spent in retail banking operations. Pertaining to corporate acquisitions, mergers, and greenfield subsidiary setups, strategic partnerships development, and tech-led new venture prospecting. The third speaker is Joshua Kibet. He manages a portfolio of Aqua for All partnerships with financial institutions across Eastern African countries since 2020. Aqua for All is an international foundation advancing SDG 6 by fostering market development and catalyzing private capital for water and sanitation services. Dietske Simon, or Simon, depending whether it's Dutch or American, is experienced in the fields of development financing, impact, and sustainability, currently serving as head of impact at Sanitation and Hygiene Fund. She leads a team of experts in sanitation and menstrual health markets and contributes to shaping strategies focused on climate, health, gender, and economic growth. Previous at the development financing institution FMO, so she is Dutch, Dietske held several leadership roles, including Director of Finance, Impact and Data, advancing the integration of impact and finance. So the questions for this second segment, the general question is the same. So provision of innovative financing is generally considered to be crucial in helping to overcome the backlash in sanitation finance. What kind of innovative financing do you think are most needed, and how could your organization contribute to this? The first specific question for Water.org is: are you providing financing to households and SME sector through financial intermediaries? What, in your view, are the top 3 measures that need to be taken to overcome the barriers to access to finance and provide more financing to urban sanitation? Over to you, Francis.
Thank you very much, Peter, and I do appreciate our previous presenters who have actually done justice. And I'll just zoom in towards the enterprise financing. And at water.org, we mainly de-risk the market for water and sanitation financing, but as well crowding capital, both from upstream investment, but also investment in financial institutions, that's banks and microfinance institutions. So I want to consider that the figures and numbers on sanitation have been well belabored, Africa Development Bank and also my colleagues from the World Bank, that in terms of the investment which comes to sanitation has, an outsized benefit that comes across, health, climate, green financing, but also to national development. but there needs to be a clear understanding of what are these enterprises that are in the sanitation value chain. And in fact, in terms of segmenting what these enterprises are, is when we look at the financing that is required around these enterprises. That in fact, when you look at the sanitation value chain in very simple terms, we start from a simple household, from the capture basis, which you have a simple toilet at the household level, to extraction and transportation. If you're looking at, the sewers, treatment, and then to the reuse. And along that value chain, there are different enterprises. And we've discovered that in our long experience of work with financial institutions and also investors, there is limited understanding of these enterprises. And in fact, for me, that is the foundational barrier that we see. And if we're able to unlock that, then we'll be able to crowd in capital into this space of sanitation. So when you speak to banks, and I know my colleagues are going to come here and speak to it, that understanding that they actually can be a pipeline of investment towards enterprises is the first barrier that we see that needs to be unlocked. And we've been, developing different technical assistance tools that, we provide to the banks in terms of developing that pipeline, understanding who are those investors, from builders of pit latrines to enterprises that, are involved in extraction, vacuum, tanks, to those who are involved in transportation, treatment plants like wastewater management, but also reuse, in terms of transporting fertilizer and the rest of that. And, along this value chain of enterprises, once they understood, then the other part, which is a barrier, is for these enterprises to develop bankable proposals that, can be taken up and offered loans by financial institutions, but also microfinance institutions. At that very basic point, once these enterprises have bankable proposals and are seen as credit-worthy, then we understand the big challenge we are dealing with in Africa, which is in fact the market, that we deal with a market which is largely perceived as a risk market, and therefore de-risking this market involves having these enterprises registering and being formal, because most of the enterprises within Africa and actually the rest of the global south are mostly informal. About 78% of them are informal. Therefore, when you look at forming transactions, generating transactions for investors, for equity investors, or debt and impact investors, it becomes difficult to form those transactions when you cannot, in fact, be able to see the balance sheets of informal enterprises. So there is a general barrier around a market that does, in fact, affect how much capital is crowded into a market and in Africa. Therefore, I look at those three aspects. One, for banks to be able to identify the pipeline, investment pipeline into enterprises along the sanitation value chain. But number two, the enterprises themselves being enabled to develop bankable proposals and also to use these proposals to get more capital, expand, and in expanding in terms of covering, the financing gap that we have in sanitation. And then number three, there is a market aspect in terms of risk, perceived risk, and in fact real risk for an emerging market for Africa, and therefore de-risking this market. And I know my colleague Joshua will be speaking about some of these de-risking instruments. But large and by, for us to, change the narrative or present a narrative that, shows that in fact, Africa and the other global South continents are not risk continents in terms of investing into enterprises. And therefore, by doing that, attracting more upstream investors and developing transactions for both equity investors and also debt financing that is required to cover this financing gap. I will stop it at that, and I'll wait for maybe the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis, for this positive story and the opportunities that may arise. So I think this is very helpful in setting the scene. My question to the next panelist is Fred. So for commercial banks, water is more attractive because of the higher returns, bigger ticket sizes, and higher political profile. Sanitation is mostly a CSR affair. Can sanitation, in your view, also become a sector like energy water that will be assessed based on commercial considerations, and what is needed to make this happen? Over to you, Fred.
Thank you, Peter, and the IWA team, and also you and the other representatives of the Africa Development Bank. I really bring context to maybe the reflections of whether this segment of WASH can actually lead to motivate the deployment of capital. And I want to actually zoom out and give a perspective. Recently, just come out of a program within the group, where between 2022 and 2024, we deployed $10 million in WASH financing. When I analyzed that and looked at how much was spent directly into sanitation, it was actually a total of $40,000. And when analyzing further, the pattern of the spend is that almost 85% of that $10 million went into abstraction. So, and last mile delivery of water. And looking at the journey of the banking mechanisms, as banks, we do lending for a living. So my revelation and sharing with other panelists and with the audience today is that there has needed to be an intentional going into the WASH sector, and here understanding water, sanitation, and hygiene wholesome, such that we can be involved in financing what is most common and what is better understood, which is the water part, and then building, foundational knowledge of sanitation and hygiene, and therefore being able to finance that. So, as bankers, taking a programmatic approach is really what I am seeing, and banks in our area, National Bank being at the forefront, CDN, COP Bank, and within KCB Group at large, going and deploying capital not only in Kenya but in Tanzania, at least $10 million each. There's an opportunity now, because of being involved in the WASH sector overall, to actually spur and catalyze, the financing of the sanitation component. And I will sum it up and close by saying, for the banking fraternity, including the KCB Group and others, we would not make inroads into sanitation and hygiene, without understanding the sector overall. And as we finance and continue to finance the water side and distribution and last mile connectivity, we then get to motivate and spur the large utility companies, the public water service providers, and we are able to solution at scale for the public utilities, and that cuts across the population. And then also work along with the community-based organizations and smaller micro groups, to fight open defecation, and also to borrow from other sectors. We've seen a program like the Africa Biodigester component, where there's financing for biodigesters for livestock waste. We can take advantage of such innovative low-cost models to finance fecal matter biodigesters. So by walking into the sector and participating, Speaker Osenu at the beginning said advocacy and dialogue like we are doing today, we're able to tackle, deploying capital and financing solutions into sanitation from many different lenses, and not only from what banks have traditionally done by looking at the lens of credit alone. So I leave it at that, but I'm very inspired that this dialogue today gives the opportunity to motivate these different lenses and to help banks go into the world of the water engineers, sanitation engineers, and therefore co-create solutions. Back to you, Peter.
Thank you, Fred, for your overview and your thorough thinking. It's always a pleasure to hear that. And what I get from it is learning by doing and going steadily ahead. So that's a good thing, a good takeaway. The question to Aqua for All, to Joshua, is Aqua for All promotes the use of de-risking instruments to attract investments in water and urban sanitation. Can the same instrument used in water also be used in sanitation, or is there a specific approach required? Over to you, Joshua.
Thank you very much, Peter, and hi everyone. My simple answer to you on the first question is, sanitation is still difficult segment, and we need real blended finance instruments and structures to be able, especially to crowd in commercial finance, like what Fred initially said from KCB Group, that this is a new territory for, especially for local commercial banks. Key thing to mention is that sanitation, if we look at our portfolios as Aqua for All across regions where we work with financial institutions, banks, and microfinance, sanitation always accounts for the tiniest segment of financial institutions' portfolio. The highest that we've seen is from a microfinance institution in Ethiopia, which is an isolated case where they, within their portfolio, 44% of that portfolio of investments went to sanitation. But for banks, commercial banks, the highest that we've seen is 12% of their overall portfolio. So sanitation requires very adapted instruments and in order to attract investment finance. And I would want to talk briefly about how we do it as Aqua for All. This is, on the left side, is a portfolio of instruments and mechanisms that we use. As I say, banks, for financial institutions, this is new segment, so they need to build the right knowledge. They need to understand the sector to be able to solution properly. So technical assistance and capacity building instruments will continuously be required in order to, upskill, test models, and learn over time. The other instrument is really much more blending of capital. And we do it in three different ways as Aqua for All. One is with fast loss capital. When we engage with financial institutions, they always perceive this sector, especially water and sanitation, as being one of the most risky sectors. So for them to step in, they need a partner that can step in alongside them and share risk. So fast loss capital, where we are able to engineer and share risk together with our counterpart partner, to be able to test those solutions. And then two, in their jurisdictions and markets also that, capital is not available locally, especially from investments. Case in point, like for example, Ethiopia, where for a long time, private capital would not flow in, but local financial institutions would want to step into the sector. So I will briefly explain on the right how we develop together with Hilton Foundation a structure whereby we are able to invest alongside with banks and also in it share risk. And then the other instrument that is always commonly preferred, especially by microfinance institutions or SMEs, the other side of the market, is results-based or outcome-based grants. I know a lot has been mentioned by our keynote speaker about output-based aid mechanisms. So we've structured impact-linked instruments before for SMEs directly, but also we have financial incentives also for financial institutions to be able to take the next step based on certain performance metrics by taking the risk and investing, then they earn an additional revenue. In Ethiopia, specifically, together with our partner Hilton Foundation, we are encouraging banks to step into the sector and microfinance institutions. And we've set up a structure, which is a revolving credit facility, whereby we invest about a third of the capital alongside a bank that is able to put in 70% of the other capital in a revolving structure that annually they are able to reinvest the capital and then on-lend it at the right terms to microfinance institutions that can retail because they have the capacity to reach even the most rural areas in communities that banks do not have the right outreach, but also they can finance SMEs directly. So this, and within this setup, we are able to work with these banks and be able to also embed risk sharing. So within it, we put our capital as part of portion of our capital as first use capital to be able to further incentivize the financial institutions to take that risk. In a nutshell, sanitation is still falling behind, even as we test these innovative financing models. We need to stretch further to be able to crowd in more investments to that subsegment. But of course, the market also is still, especially in this part of the world, for sanitation is still, other than bigger infrastructure, the SME landscape is still also small. So that's why it's, as Fred says, water is, the anchor, and then sanitation then follows and rides on that. Back to you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Joshua. And you made clearly, or you explained clearly that the sector is still unknown to the commercial sector. So there needs to be, besides supporting measures, it is also necessary to get to know each other better and speak each other's language, so that the perceived risks will be lower than the actual risks. Okay, thank you. My question to Dietske is, SHF prepared sanitation market studies in a number of countries, which indicate that there is a huge market potential in sanitation. What is your innovative financing approach that has been successfully applied in Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda? And could that be used elsewhere to scale up sanitation activities? Over to you.
Yes, hello everyone. So indeed, the Sanitation and Hygiene Fund is the only United Nations entity focused on market-based solutions for non-sewerage sanitation and menstrual health. And I really appreciate the inspiring examples that already have been shared today. And as SHF, we believe that the real challenge and the real opportunity lies in changing how finance flows to reach the skill that is needed. And therefore, we see our role as transformational, you could say more upstream. And I think one of our most important contributions is actually bringing partners together, working on that common language, just like you mentioned before. And that means aligning the policy side, the public finance side, the private sector, and financial institutions to create the market conditions where sanitation becomes that investable sector we all talk about. So personally, I've worked in finance for many, many years, and also across many different sectors. And I think what's clear for other sectors also holds true for sanitation. There's actually no single type of investment or innovation that gets you to the skill. I mean, you need blended finance, debt equity guarantees, small tickets, large tickets, short tenors, long tenors. You need local and international financiers, and all with different risk appetites along the entire value chain. So, and on top of that, of course, no country and context are the same. But if we want to transform the sector, we need to almost like orchestrate the diversity of finance. And as a UN entity, we work through governments and with different sets of partners at multiple levels with the aim of basically fitting it all together. So let me share two brief practical examples for Uganda and Nigeria that we believe are pieces of this puzzle, essentially. So first in Uganda, together with Water for People, we supported a results-based financing mechanism. The topic results-based financing was also mentioned before in this conversation. But what I want to highlight is actually that crucially for this, the government of Uganda committed its own budget, showing strong political leadership. And what it does, it of course not only mobilizes household investment, it stimulates supply, and it builds viable delivery systems. But actually that role of the government is critical because that provides for a more longer term horizon. And with that, the sector can attract local finance with confidence. The second example for Nigeria is at the other end of the spectrum almost, and that's actually more focused on integrating sanitation into the country's broader financial architecture. So one of our key partnerships in Nigeria is with the Development Bank of Nigeria, and that collaboration is designed to unlock local currency finance for sanitation in a way that basically outlasts, again, project cycles and really delivers longer term impact. So this partnership is around two core pillars. First of all, it started capacity building, supporting the Development Bank of Nigeria and its network and partner institutions to better understand its sanitation economy and to develop tailored financial products for the sector. And secondly, it's essentially unlocking capital flows, local capital, leveraging DBN to expand access. And of course, this is about job creation, enterprise growth, and strengthening the financial system around sanitation. And it also offers a model and an opportunity for other organizations, the ones that are here on the call today, and I hope many of you who are listening, to actually draw and adapt these kind of models and add to it. Because this is only one piece of the puzzle, right? And we have to work all together on this. And actually, that's how I also wanted to close. So this morning, I was speaking to one of the European development finance institutions. And again, the message was clear. We really need to collaborate, talk, use the same language, see how we can all connect, right? How all the financing needs can interact. And I really think if you have a piece in this puzzle, please reach out to us and we can see how we can further collaborate on this together. Let me stop here.
Thank you so much, Dietske, for bringing up the very practical examples. So that's very enlightening. Thank you very much. Again, there's loads and loads of questions from the audience, and unfortunately, we are stringent in time, so that's a pity. There's one question that I want to raise to this group. There are lending and sanitation groups, and they save money, but it is informal. And are there experiences or are there possibilities in your view on formalizing these lending and saving groups and using that to strengthen the sanitation case?
I'm happy to give it a go. I think, like I just mentioned, again, this is another part of the puzzle, right? Another piece that is very important. And what we are also seeing, for instance, looking at the data, amongst others in Uganda, is that there is a certain percentage of private investments into sanitation that comes from this type of financing. I think what we are doing currently is trying to better understand it, and also what can we do, what does it tell us, and what can we do to strengthen this, and also see if there's a need for further support to this kind of finance. I think the percentage is still relatively small. From top of mind, I think about 5% of the total private investment into sanitation in Uganda is coming from this type of sources. But nevertheless, I mean, that's a huge potential.
Sorry, then we go to the last segment. There's two panelists in this segment on the non-financial institutions. Chola Mbilima. She has over 18 years experience in water supply and sanitation regulation, working with NWASCO for 8 years at senior management level. She is specialized in economic and incentive regulation, governance, skill development, benchmarking, strategic planning, integrity management, and gender mainstreaming. And then the last, Mamadou Gueye. He is the technical advisor to the General Management and National Office of Sanitation of Senegal, ONAS, with over 25 years of experience in sanitation, food and chemical industries, quality and hygiene management. From 2018 to 2023, he served as director of the program for structuring fecal sludge market and as on-site sanitation director at ONAS. Mamadou is trained food processing engineer and holds a master in product management in 2024. So my questions to this specific panelist of the last group. For Chola, in Zambia, a sanitation surcharge is levied on the water bills to fund sanitation extension projects. The primary goal is to finance sanitation infrastructure improvements and expansions, particularly in areas with limited sanitation services. How can you ensure that the funds target all segments of the population, especially the low-income areas? Over to you, Chola.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good day to all the listeners. That is a very good question, Peter, that you've asked. And as you've rightly put it, in Zambia, we have what we're calling a sanitation surcharge. So having listened to other presenters on this topic, what one would need to realize is that we do have quite a bit of windows from the different institutions and sources, I would say, of financing. But I think what makes the sanitation surcharge unique is that it's a local initiative and it's not coming from a financial institution. It's basically an initiative from a regulator of water supply and sanitation. And in this case, it's NWASCO, which is a regulator in Zambia. So one of the issues that we noted, like it has already been highlighted by other presenters, is that sanitation definitely has been lacking behind in terms of funding. And therefore, that is demonstrated even in the access levels. Most of our people do not have access to sanitation. But to make it worse, you will find that most of our low-income communities actually depend on on-site sanitation. The case of Zambia, I think, it's very clear with the numbers that we have more than 70% of our population depending on on-site sanitation. So when you look at most of the financing initiatives, their focus in the past, now there's been a bit of some shift, but mostly the focus in the past has been on sewage systems, which are benefiting just a small population. So now, to come to your question, how do we ensure that this particular initiative reaches all the segments of the population? The sanitation surcharge is indeed a percentage of the bill. In our case, it's 2.5%, but we have room to even increase it up to 5%. And what we do is that it is a regulated fund by the regulator. So the utilities are not allowed to use it as they please. They must put up proposals to the regulator for approval as to where and how they want to use this particular fund. And therein lies the control of how they direct these resources to the areas that are most in need, and also to make sure that there's equity in the distribution of these resources, but also in ensuring that there's equity in the access levels. So the focus on our end is mainly to look at the underserved areas. And you will see that those, like I've indicated, are focused on on-site sanitation initiatives. So the surcharge actually finances projects that range from rehabilitating sewer lines that have collapsed, and mostly these sewer lines are in the low-income communities. But it can also be used to construct toilets, safely managed toilets for communities that cannot afford to construct those. And it can also be used to construct treatment plants, fecal sludge treatment plants. It can be used also to purchase other equipment that can help in sanitation service provision across the service chain. So basically, when you look at this charge, why is it an incentive, an innovative initiative, is that it is controlled, like I have said. So utilities are basically directed at where to put this money, but also it is scalable. So in our case, we started with one utility, the biggest one, to pilot it. But as it is now, we have 7 utilities that are using this surcharge. So it is quite scalable, and it's a straightforward initiative. And also it increases with the growth in water access or water coverage. So once you increase your access levels to water and sanitation, that also increases the surcharge itself, because, like I mentioned, it's a percentage of the water. So I think, despite what has been there in the past, where water has always been taking advantage of sanitation in a bad way, with this initiative, we're actually riding on the water in a good way, because everybody is putting money in water. So if we can get some of that money through the water business to put into sanitation, I think that will help. So far, we've raised about 5.5 million US dollars. It may not sound too much, but if you look at the sizes of these utilities, it is quite some substantial amounts of money. And I think what matters the most is that you are able to see where this resource is directed and how it's being utilized. So the communities, the public in general, is involved in ensuring that sanitation service provision improves. So Peter, over to you. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chola. It sounds like a very interesting initiative, and I think that Zambia is one of the few countries. I heard in Kenya they started also, so maybe it is a possibility to replicate and to see for other countries how to use it also. So it's very interesting. So thank you so much for that. My question to Mamadou is, ONAS is responsible for urban sanitation. Does ONAS reach its sanitation objectives? And how effective and scalable are the blended and leveraged financing mechanisms in ensuring sanitation services reach to low-income areas and population? Over to you, Mamadou.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter. I would like to say hello to everybody, and to give us these opportunities to share with you Senegalese experience in water and sanitation. I would like to say to thank the African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and all the participants who give us this opportunity to share with us Senegalese experience. I would like to share with you 3 projects in Senegal. We have the first project is the program for the structuring of fecal sludge market in Senegal, PSMBV. I think that a lot of people know from this program. because this program began since 2021, since 2011, in the framework of a partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I think that's a very interesting case, because from 2011 to 2025, we received $13 million as a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And this grant was evenly distributed 50% for soft components, including studies, capacity building, training, and operational costs of the Omni processor version 1 and 2, and 50% for hard components, covering investment in the manufacturing of the Omni processor version 1 and 2, and the construction of the fecal sludge treatment plant in Tivaouane Peulh district in the suburbs of Dakar City. ONAS did a lot of progress from the grant get from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, $13 million, because from 2020 to 2025, ONAS mobilized $300 million, representing a leverage ratio from 22:1. This means that for every $1 granted by $1 granted by the Gates Foundation during this period from 2020 to 2020, from 2011 to 2025, ONAS generate $22 in additional funding through a mix of equity, debt, and grants for sanitation-related projects across Senegal. And with this program of fecal sludge, of the structuring of the fecal sludge market in Senegal, the National Sanitation Office of Senegal, ONAS, delegate to a Senegalese private company the management, the operating, and maintenance of 10 fecal sludge treatment plants from 2020 to 2030. We delegate before for a pilot phases from 2013 to 2020, the 4 fecal sludge plant of Dakar City, and from the good result we get for the pilot phases, we scale up by delegating 10 fecal sludge treatment plants from 2020 to 2030. The second example I would like to share with you is the citywide inclusive sanitation strategy and project implemented by ONAS. It is a project of sanitation and hygiene project targeting 8 cities in the south of Senegal. And we are looking for $50 million from the Islamic Development Bank, and 35% of this loan of this amount will be get from the Islamic Development Bank as a loan, and 35 will be got from the Life and Livelihoods Funds as a grant, 65 as a loan, and 35 as a grant. And what more we do with ONAS is that the project of a renewing sludge sanitation trucks is the framework of this project. That's what you see in the screen. We mobilized $4 million from $1 million we get as a collateral guaranteed from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and $1 million we get from the government, Senegalese government, as also a collateral guarantees. It means that we have a leverage ratio from 2:1. It means that $1 we get as a collateral guarantee from the government and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation allow us to leverage $2 from the Commercial Development Bank. And it is just the pilot phases because we would like to renew 40 trucks, MPS trucks, but in the scaling up, we target to renew 300 MPS trucks in overall Senegal. Also for leveraging and blended financing, to answer to Peter's question, very interesting. You see in these slides that the budget of the Senegal government is increased from 134% from 2017 to 2023. From 2017 to 2023, you see that it's very important level. It's a very important increase because it's due to the ongoing project of desalination plant with a capacity of 5,000 cubic meters per day, extensible to 100,000 cubic meters per day. We have also another project, KMS3. This is a drinking water supply plant with a capacity 100,000 cubic meters per day, extensible to 200,000 cubic meters per day. As the budget of this project is $500 million within a partnership between the Senegalese government, the African Development. I think that the question we would like to have to say is that how to cover the big investment we did in water by sanitation, because we have at least 300,000 cubic meters per day, which is out in the water drinking supply water. I think that the problem is that we should resolve this problem by asking this question. Sanitation is a suburban train which used to try to catch up water, which is the highway train. I think that it is a big question we have to ask and to propose solution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mamadou, for your exposure.
Thank you very much.
And for the elaboration of the 3 projects. So thank you so much. Francois, I think it's over to you now for the wrap up.
Yes, thank you very much to everybody, to all the panelists. The discussion has been extremely rich. We can see from the Q&A, from the chat, from the panelists, we are going to make a follow-up on this. Don't worry, your questions are not going to be completely left at this stage. We will either organize another session or make sure that you get some responses. Really, so basically to wrap up, of course, we are all recognizing the immense financing gap there is in the sanitation sector, but we also recognize that the profile of sanitation has been improving in the past years. What we see also, and that is these are things that can be solved. The project preparation needs to be improved. This really can be solved. The disbursement rate can be improved. This is clearly things that can be solved. It's not out of reach. We see also that there's a whole new avenue with climate financing. And Sanyu, you've been speaking a lot about how to frame sanitation with a different framework as a climate investment. What a brilliant new possibility as well. So the surcharge idea from Zambia is extremely actually interesting as well, and as well as the blended financing that has been proposed from Senegal. What we have learned from all the others is something quite important and quite similar. There's a big need to actually understand better the sector, to better understand the value chain, to understand the market, because the banks don't understand it. The finances are, okay, they're willing to do something, but they don't understand. And I see now the big role that is being played in de-risking, and this is absolutely interesting. Thanks a lot for the local financing center to actually play this role in de-risking and ensuring that there's still a window of opportunities for these sanitation players. So giving this, I think we've got a good way forward. I'm not going to go much further, but just to say, yes, there is a possibility to go ahead in some financing, but quite amazingly, it relies also on understanding better what is happening at local level, so that the projects don't have this risky nature. Let's change the narrative about sanitation investment. I will conclude with this, and Osenu, perhaps you can give also just a word of words to close this session, and I will just go on after this just to make some announcement. Yes.
Thank you so much, Francois. Happy to see you after how many years? 45?
No, 100.
No,
100.
35. 35 years.
Long time, yeah. Yeah. Nice to see you again, Senu.
No, I think you have already summarized the key information. What I just jotted down is that, yes, the tools are there, the instruments are there, the initiatives are there. So what is hampering to speed up operations, actions, so that the targets could be met. I think we have to strengthen our support to the countries, because for me, it's a key. The tools are here, but there is a need of coordination and having a strong commitment at country levels and coordination too, so that yes, I cannot say that in 5 years we will get there, but at least important step could be done toward there. I want just to thank everybody for the commitment over this 1.5 hours, and also see you soon for another topic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Over
Thank you, Senu, and indeed it was really nice to see you again, Senu.
I have just sent a message to Cora, just to see if she reminds.
Okay, great. Look, just to tell you, there's a super interesting Congress coming up in Bangkok. So if you're welcome to join on the 8th of December. The registration is open. And then we have also, should you want to become join the network of water professionals, don't hesitate to actually join this and amplify the dialogue and make us benefit from your experience and knowledge. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Peter. That was really brilliantly done. And thank you, Florence. Thank you, Peter, is at the back of the whole thing. Bye-bye. All the best to you.